What's up, everyone? It's the Autistic Scyther here, and considering in my past videos, I've taken a look at three of the four classic weapons that have been used in many different forms of media. Those being swords, lances or spears, and bows. However, there's one weapon I have not talked about until now, and that's the axe. In which, when you think about it, as much as I love swords and bows, the axe is an interesting battle style an interesting weapon that honestly really intrigues me, since it's basically seen as a strong yet versatile weapon being used by many different people, from lumberjacks to executioners to Vikings to all around big brutish individuals. And the fact that video games have had a lot of notable axe wielders that have also run that gamut, it really says a lot that, granted, I really enjoy it. So, in all fairness, why not take a look at my top... It's time to take a look at my top 10 axe wielders in video games. Now, to be eligible for this list, we're going to take a look at... The rule is one per franchise, and they have to use axes in their moveset at least once, which really does say a lot. So, with that being said, let's get started. Alright, starting off first at number 10, we have the Axum Rangers from Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. Alright, we're starting this one off with a Mario rep, and naturally it comes to us from the iconic RPG video game Super Mario RPG and its remake for the Switch. And naturally, considering how I've played both, I really love the fact that every member of the Smithy Gang is a reference to the two different weapons. For example, you have Mac, or Claymore, or as he's known in the remake, Claymorton, who is basically based on either a knife or a claymore. You have Bowyer, who is based on a bow. Punchinello, which is a reference to explosives. And Yaridovich, or of course, as he's known in the remake, Spiridovich, who is a reference to lances and spears. Or specifically in his original name, the Yari, a type of Japanese spear. Which, ironically enough, I don't know why the remake changed his name to Spiridovich instead of keeping it as Yaridovich. I mean, we have access to the internet at the palm of our hands. I mean, in all fairness, any young kid who has not played the original Super Mario RPG but has played the remake, if they saw his name as Yaridovich, they could have at least they have access to the internet to look up what exactly a Yari is. Honestly, I don't know. I think this is just kind of a similar vein to Pokemon turning onigiri into jelly-filled donuts. But all that aside, One of the most notable ones are the Axum Rangers, a group of five axe-wielding enemies that basically show up to steal the star before Mario gets one of the 7 stars before Mario gains access to it, leading to him fighting off against all 5 of them. And while they all fight using axes, the big thing is they're all based on they're all based on the many different teams of the Super Sentai franchise, or as people in the West know them as Power Rangers. And honestly, in all fairness, as a guy that has essentially seen 3 Power Ranger series, Jungle Fury, Ninja Storm, and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, I really love the Power Rangers reference, especially with the fact that not only do all 5 of the members share specific personalities with each other, being Red as the leader and is basically the all-rounder in terms of damage. Black is basically the brooding bad boy and the more technically offensive of this, and fights using technical attacks. Green is the thinnest. Green is basically the brains and the one that more or less utilizes spells. Yellow is the big guy who is not only the tankiest but does the most damage. And Pink is obviously the girl, as well as the healer of the group. But that being said, you gotta admit their interactions with each other are just amazing. And you're facing all 5 of them in a boss battle. And when you defeat each of them, they have a little bit of they have a little bit of a dialogue with Red, which seems like they're both arguing back and forth, but it's kind of fun to say the least, with things like Yellow mentioning how he's hungry, or Pink telling Red that her mascara's running, with Red just firing back with, "Then change brands!" It's kind of amazing. That being said, it kind of makes me wonder what would happen if they added a blue Axum Ranger, and maybe it's a reference to the fact that he's Scottish. Who knows? But that's not all of it, because after all 5 of them are defeated, they basically move into their second phase, where they end up summoning a Megazord. Yeah, a straight up Megazord in the form of a ship called the Blade. And basically this is one of the toughest ones you have to face off against. But it's just crazy nonetheless. That's the best thing I've ever seen. And I've played through the Super Mario RPG remake up to Spear the Fish, so yeah, it says a lot. That's all I gotta say. Moving on next at number 9, we have Garrett from Golden Sun. Oh boy. Speaking of iconic yet cult classic RPGs, it is a surprise how Nintendo has not given Golden Sun the attention it's deserved. I mean, I know it's on the Nintendo Switch Online service for the GBA, as well as Golden Sun: The Lost Age. But with the release of the Nintendo Switch 2, they really haven't gotten anything. I mean, ever since the Nintendo Switch 2 got released, we've seen a brand new Donkey Kong title with Donkey Kong Bonanza, a new game for Yoshi. We've seen plans for a return to form in Pokemon for Generation 10 of the Generation 10 main series titles for Pokemon Winds and Waves, as well as the upcoming Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave. And then there's, of course, and heck, even a brand new remake of Star Fox 64 for the Nintendo Switch 2. As well as a fourth Xenoblade title. Yeah, that's all well and good, but honestly, the fact that Golden Sun has not gotten a fourth game in the series, or at least a remake of the first game, is kind of disappointing to say the least. Excuse me. And of course, not only that, Golden Sun is kind of an interesting one, since the first game had some amazing characters, one of which being Garrett, who of course is Isaac's childhood friend from their hometown of Vale, who was essentially with him ever since the beginning. Never mind the fact that he's the grandson of the mayor of Vale. Seriously, you would think there would be some conflict of interest here. But of course, basically, from the beginning, both Isaac and Garrett not only came across Satoros and Minardi back at the beginning of the game, where they were searching, where they were trying to find a way to stop up a storm from causing a flood that eventually not only destroyed a good amount of their village, but also caused the disappearance of their other friend Jenna's brother Felix, and the death of Isaac's father. That being said, Garrett is basically either way. Garrett basically sticks with him through thick and thin, as a stalwart buddy. And it sticks with Isaac through thick and thin as a stalwart buddy, even though he's also kind of a comedic relief character, kind of seeming reminiscent of Rhyne from Xenoblade Chronicles, or a certain other character that's gotta be on this list. But even with that, Garrett basically serves as your standard, well, I guess I'd say your DPS character, as he's able to do some heavy-hitting attacks with his physical attack. But again, considering how he basically is a Mars adept, it means he's basically able to use fire-based synergy and many aspects of the Mars that comes when it comes to easily to Mars adepts, including many moves that buff his party, or that can basically buff the stats of his of the other party members, or debuffing enemy stats like Haze and Corona, or powerful fire-based spells like the fire/flare series of moves, or powerful fire spells like Firewall, Flare Storm, Eruption, and Inferno. And of course, even utilizing the fire gen, even utilizing several powerful fire summons to deal some really heavy-hitting damage. From of course Mars being the standard fire elemental, to Kieran basically summoning a almost canine-like beast with his rider to just rush through the opponent, dealing fire damage. Rush through the battlefield, dealing fire damage to the opponents. To Tiamat basically summoning a dragon into inflaming his opponents with fire breath. And Meteor, or basically summoning a meteor from space to slam down onto the opponent's entire party and dealing massive damage to them. Granted, the fact of the matter is, Garrett's pretty low on the list since he does not use axes all that much. But considering how you're able to more or less utilizing fire magic, but considering how you're able to equip weapons to many different people, Garrett more or less fits as an axe wielder since he gets a good amount of a power boost from axes themselves. I guess the devil's in the details. So, it really says a lot. Moving on, next at number 8, we have Tomahawk Man from Mega Man 6. Yeah. Alright, Mega Man 6. Back to Mega Man 6. And for those that don't know, Mega Man 6 is one of my favorite Mega Man games. Granted, give or take, with one or two ahead of it. But when you think about it, Mega Man 6 is a pretty solid title since all 8 of the Robot Masters from the Mega Man franchise, from this game, and from this entry, were all essentially built to be for one thing: combat. And it's especially interesting how Tomahawk Man definitely showcases this perfectly, since he's basically from the southwestern United States. Granted, he's more or less based on a stereotypical Native American, since not only is he a brave and steadfast warrior, he also has a love of horseback riding, which really kind of, but he also has a love of horseback riding. That being said, Tomahawk Man's design is kind of iffy when you think about it. For those who remember when the Washington Commanders football team used to be called the Washington Redskins, and the entire controversy that happened leading up to their name change, yeah, it's kind of like that. Mostly America is not that good with like Native American imagery and stereotyping, so yeah. And honestly, this was kind of Mega Man's first rodeo with this. Something that Oil Man kinda, well, topped with the whole blackface thing. But I digress. When it comes down to it, Tomahawk Man is a very solid battler. And when you face off against him, he's mostly a fast battle. He's basically a hard fighter a hard robot master to face off against, as he'll mostly attack you by jumping and rebounding off the wall when he hits it. And basically he'll use a lot of different jumps, many of which can be dodged by Mega Man sliding underneath him in order to damage him. even using a false jump. And of course, while he does that, he either ends up he also adds to that by attacking you with his silver tomahawk, where he throws it at Mega Man in order to damage him, or by firing a storm of feathers from his headdress, or by firing several feathers from his headdress, which honestly really is a kind of an interesting battle style. And that being said, yeah, while there are some Mad Lads that will kind of defeat Tomahawk Man using only Mega Man's Mega Buster, basically the best way to defeat him is to utilize the plant barrier. His weakness weapon of the plant barrier, which actually is the signature weapon of Plant Man. Now, how Plant Barrier can defeat Tomahawk Man, I don't know. But if you want to learn more about that, I suggest you watch Flaming Mercury 5's video about explaining every Mega Man Robot Master weakness, since she can explain that better than I can. It really says a lot. Of course, once you do defeat him, you gain access to the silver tomahawk weapon, and for yourself. And this is a perfect weapon against Yamato Man, because of course, as most Fire Emblem fans will know, axes beat lances. And of course, that's not even mentioning about TomahawkMan.exe from Mega Man Battle Network. Because, oh my god, they ramped up the Native American warrior angle immensely. And especially with the fact that it even shows him as a native Natopian. And heck, they even show that with his operator Dingo, who is a nature-loving net battler. And honestly, it's kind of awesome to say the least. Plus, Tomahawk Man's stage is basically looks like something out of a Western movie with an enemy in it known as Colton, named after the Colt revolver by famed inventor Samuel Colt. The very sort of weapon and the very sort of revolver that you see in Western movies, or that is linked with the Wild West. Honestly, it's just this attention to detail that makes it so awesome. Moving on next at number 7, we have Thunder from Killer Instinct. Yeah, yet another Native American fighter. And basically, when it comes down to it, it's kind of interesting to say the least that both Thunder and Tomahawk Man are more or less kind of the opposite end of the spectrum when it comes down to Native American representation. As basically, Tomahawk Man in both his original Mega Man 6 form and his NetNavi version are both based on, are both basically based on, stereotypical depictions of Native Americans, basically with the headdress and such. Headdress and tomahawk and such. But Thunder is basically, seemingly enough, a very different form of Native American representation. Granted, while most of it wasn't seemingly there in the original version of Killer Instinct for the SNES, as he was just a dude, a shirtless dude, a large dude, that's bare-chested and wearing green camouflage pants, who fights utilizing his axe, and a mohawk who fights utilizing his axes. But when Killer Instinct 2013 was released, they basically did their homework and reached out to a member of the Nez Perce community. And oh my god, it shows, because not only is he looking like he basically looking like a Nez Perce warrior, he also ends up speaking the Nez Perce language. Most of it I cannot pronounce because, yeah. But even with that, Chief Thunder kind of is an interesting individual as he joins the Ultratech tournament in order to investigate the mysterious disappearance of his younger brother Eagle, only to discover the truth that, and as it turns out, Eagle was more or less used as a basis for the robotic warrior Fulgor. As in, he was turned into a Fulgor unit. Oh my god, that's really hardcore. But even with that, his fighting style seems to be pretty solid. I mean, granted, while he does have access to your standard Shoto clone fireball attack, like Phoenix, as well as a couple of headbutts in the original Killer Instinct, a lot of his attacks are axe attacks, where he just attacks his opponent with a swipe of his axes, either rapid fire or single strikes, low sweeping axe strikes to trip up his opponents, and even throwing his axe at any angle to deal damage to them, and sometimes even coming back, dealing damage on the crackback. Granted, while I basically did get a chance to play through the original Killer Instinct as Thunder, again, I only made it to Jago. So, it wasn't that much, but I got a bit of a feel for playing as Thunder. But, yeah, maybe I'm just bad at fighting games. I don't know. Excuse me. Also, in the SNES version, it's also revealed that he plays football. Making it a nice little reference to famed football player Jim Thorpe, famed Native American football player / sportsman Jim Thorpe. So, yeah, kind of a nice little reference. Moving on next at number 6, we have Francisca from Kirby Star Allies. Yeah, well, I haven't played through Kirby Star Allies at all. In most of the Kirby games I have played, I noticed that when it comes down to the standard weapon shrine and standard weapons that have been seen in different forms of media, Kirby has basically utilized in terms of his copy abilities. He's shown a mastery of the sword, the spear, and the bow, especially with the archer copy ability. That being said, he has never utilized an axe before. Now, this could just be chalked up to the fact that he's a pink puffball and would seem out of place for him to utilize such a British weapon like that. But considering how he's faced off against aliens, rogue AI, and eldritch abominations, yeah, that's kind of a moot point. And it's not out of the realm of possibility for Kirby to get an axe copy ability at some point. That being said, oh boy, when Star Allies came around, yeah, this is not only things ended up getting ramped up. Not only are we able to control many of Kirby's friends and allies, and I guess even former enemies like Magalore, Marx, Taranza, and Susie, and basically asking them for their help. Basically, we end up getting introduced to the three Mage Sisters. And of course, all of them are kind of have their own main method of battle, which fits for them. As of course, we have Zan Partisan, the steadfast leader of the three Mage Sisters, who wields a lance. Flamberge, the hot-headed warrior and a flaming sword. And Francisca, the cool beauty and her axe. And actually, when it comes down to it, when it comes to Francisca, she's kind of an interesting character, as she shows a kind of cool, almost analytical and, dare I say it, posh personality to her. Almost as if she's almost shocked that Kirby would stand against her and her siblings, as well as the Jambastian Empire. That being said, yeah, even with that, it's kind of an interesting one, but she actually is a very solid fighter, and one that really knows her stuff. As she's a hard-hitting boss with her axe. Basically able to swing it in a wide arc in order to hit Kirby and his allies for some solid damage. Spinning it around to hit everyone in a wide radius. Throwing her axe in order to deal damage. And even in her second battle, she ends up adding in access by using frozen candies as projectiles, as well as a I guess I'd say a gun that can shoot soda. And all of them have an ice aspect to it, which is pretty interesting to say the least. But the more I thought about Francisca, the more I wondered why she uses an axe instead of just being a mage, which really says a lot, as again, a flambear is just a type of a sword, which fits for flambears. Well, Zan Partisan, while she does use a spear, kind of is a nice little reference to an actual lightning bolt. Kind of like, well, Zeus when you think about it. Yeah, Zeus from Greek mythology. But, in all fairness, flambears, as it turns out, flambears is basically a type of, a Francisca is basically a type of an axe that was used by the ancient Franks, a group of people who used to live in what is now modern day Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, Germany, and France. So at this point, I essentially did not even know all this. And I was kind of amazed, to say the least. Also, it kind of makes sense, but I think the fact that she utilizes a powerful axe might also be kind of a juxtaposition of the, well-to-do or classy lady who's willing to get her hands dirty when need be. Kind of like Haru Okamura from Persona 5. Yeah, didn't think I'd make a Persona reference here, but yeah. And even with that, I can see how she became very popular on the internet. Seriously. For your own help, if you want, seriously, just look up Francisca fan art, and you'll see what I mean. So yeah, that being said, I hope we see more of Francisca and the rest of the Mage Sisters in future Kirby projects. Hey, if Susie made an appearance in Kirby Air Riders, if Susie made a playable appearance in Kirby Air Riders, the three Mage Sisters can essentially make another appearance as well. And Elfling. Just gotta say that. Moving on next at number 5, we have Labris from Persona 4 Arena. Alright. While I have yet to play a Persona game, to be exact, honestly, in all fairness, I actually still have an interest in Persona, since my very first exposure to the Persona franchise was through, well, Persona 4, the animation. Yeah, the anime version of Persona 4. Which is crazy that we are now getting a remake of Persona 4 in the near future. But all this aside, the fact of the matter is, we never see a Persona. I never knew that Persona 4 had a fighting game. And honestly, this leads us into being introduced to Labris, who basically looks like just your standard or middle school or high school girl, as she's basically the class rep of Yasogami High School, the main high school from Persona 4. And, well, she kind of looks that way. However, as it turns out, we discover later on in the game that she was essentially an anti-shadows robot created by the Kirijo Foundation in order to fight off against the shadows. Yeah. And for those that don't know, the Kirijo Foundation is more or less linked with Mitsuru Kirijo from Persona 3. So the fact that it's compared with this, it really says a lot. But of course, not only that, she's more or less grappling with what it means to be human. And, well, she takes it pretty well. As she's more or less not only he's serious as class rep, she's more or less serious and strict and disciplined. But when it comes down to it, she's kind and caring to everyone she meets, and is basically willing to fight right with, and is basically more or less willing to befriend anyone. And honestly, this leads to a lot of interactions that are just amazing. They're kind of amazing. Like, especially in her before fight animation. In her many before battle dialogue, before battle and after and victory dialogue in the game, as she's basically still willing to spar with Yusuke constantly. She basically shows an interest in making Teddy her knight. And when facing off against Ken and Koromaru, she's basically surprised that an animal can have a persona. She's more or less, her ideals are more or less at odds with Mitsuru's, and she basically sees Aigis as an older sister, as a sister, even though Aigis more or less preceded her to an extent. And it's kind of interesting to say the least. Of course, that being said, she more or less fights with her axe, which is, of course, well, her namesake being a Labrys, which is an axe from Greek mythology. And, well, she even utilizes her. But of course, the big thing is she even has an access to activating her own persona, which basically excuse me, which basically, as it turns out, is more or less based on her persona, as it turns out, is Asterius, aka the name of the Minotaur that Theseus faced off against. Honestly, I never knew that was the Minotaur's name. Well, until Josh Scorcher's top 10 dual bosses in top 10 dual bosses countdown, when he basically put Theseus and Asterius from Hades at number 1. So, yeah, I didn't know Asterius was the actual name of the Minotaur. But the fact that Labrys's persona is basically named after the Minotaur is kind of surprising. Also, there is also the fact that Labrys also shares part of her name with the labyrinth, with the word labyrinth, which is where the Minotaur was placed within, and in the story of Theseus and the Minotaur. It's kind of a nice little nod to that. Okay, now I really need to play a lot more Persona. Yeesh. Moving on next at number 4, we have Cleavor from Pokemon. Yeah. When it comes down to it, I kind of had something interesting here, as my original idea for an axe wielder from Pokemon was originally going to be Haxorus from Generation 5. As basically, not only is it known as the Axe Jaw Pokemon, but its entire evolutionary line basically uses their tusks as basically axe blades. So, yeah, that really does say a lot. However, that is until we learned of lore from the northern region of Sinnoh, back when it was originally known as Hisui, where they learned about where tales and legends were told about a savage creature roaming through the forest, slicing trees with its axe-like hands and cladding itself in armor of stone. If you encounter it, one's only recourse is to flee. And that being said, when we first saw Cleavor, we knew that this thing is awesome. Alright, for those that already don't know, keep in mind, my channel name is the Autistic Scyther. Scyther is basically my channel mascot, so in all fairness, I really do have a love of the Scyther line. And considering how good Scyther and Scizor are, really says a lot. But when I first saw Cleavor, I knew when I eventually got Pokemon Legends Arceus, Pokemon Legends Arceus, that I was essentially going to use Cleavor. And my first playthrough, that's what I did. I basically, in that first area, when we got close to the Hearthwood, I sought out a Scyther in which I essentially captured it and added it to my team. And then it just took me a long time to find the black augurite that I needed in order to equip it. But let me tell you, it was time well spent, because Cleavor became one of the few Pokemon that I was so impressed with. I mean, first off, it's bug and rock type, which is basically the type that's linked with Pokemon like Shuckle and the Dwebble line. And is a stark contrast to Scizor, who is bug and steel. But even with that, it has its own sort of battle style all its own that makes it and very usable, gaining access to moves like X-Scissor, or Aerial Ace, Stone Edge, Swords Dance, Earthquake, Rock Slide, U-Turn, her Wing Attack, and of course even Wing Attack, False Swipe, Protect, Stealth Rock, and even its signature move, Stone Axe, where it basically attacks its opponent with its stone axe-like hands, leaving rocky splinters behind to damage any opponent that comes in. Yeah, basically not only does it deal damage, but it sets up Stealth Rock. Oh my god, that is an amazing one. And that's not even limited with the fact that it's your first noble Pokemon you face off against in Legends Arceus, or Legends Arceus. Because when you first arrive in the arena, you basically see it running around you before basically making an entrance. And it's by jumping through into the air in front of you and slamming its axe-like hands down to intimidate you. And basically all you gotta do is throw bombs at of it made from its favorite food at it in order to try and calm it, while Kleavor is basically just charging at you with its like you, trying to chop you up into human sashimi, and even swiping in blades of air at you. Just, oh my god, it is just so awesome. But even with that, that's mostly Generation 8, aka Legends Arceus. That's mostly in Generation 8. Since we're in Generation 9 going into Gen 10, what about... And you wouldn't think it would show up. Guess again! Because basically, it came back with a vengeance. Not only showing up in the indigo disc, being able to be captured in the terrarium, but you're able to find the item that you can utilize, that you can use to evolve it, that being the black augurite, inside of the terrarium. Which again, considering how the place you can find it at, Blueberry Academy, is set in Unova, it basically implies that Black Augurite may have either been brought to Unova from Hisui, or at least mined there in some way, shape, or form. And considering how one of the members of the BB League is Lacey, being the daughter of Clay, the Driftvale Hill City gym leader, it definitely means that they may have something to do with this. Especially with the fact that the original Warden of Kleavor is Leon. Which my headcanon is, he may have moved to Unova at some point after the events of Legends Arceus. And not only that, but Generation 9 also gave it an amazing buff with the ability Sharpness, which powers up slicing moves. including Stone Axe. Not only that, but you also have it even showed up enough to make an appearance in the Mega Dimension DLC of Legends ZA, and is basically holding some sway in Pokemon Champions. I at least believe it is. I have yet to play through Pokemon Champions. But either way, Kleavor is an awesome Pokemon. And don't let my channel name sway you any further. Moving on next at number 3, we have Hector from Fire Emblem Blazing Sword. Yeah. Yet again, when it comes to these weapon lists, honestly, it kinda makes it hard to figure out Fire Emblem characters who utilize specific weapons. And in terms of axes, you got a lot that I could have utilized. I mean, you have Ross from Fire Emblem Sacred Stones, who is one of the most well-known characters from that game, and one of the best characters. Vake from Fire Emblem Awakening, Boyd from Tellius, Arthur from Fate, Caspar from Three Houses, Boucheron and Panette from Engage, Lex from Genealogy. However, you knew I had to go with Hector. I mean, first off, he's one of the 3 main lords of Fire Emblem Blazing Sword, and one of the most iconic due to being the only one who specializes in using axes. And like Garrett, he's basically a steadfast friend to his fellow lord Eliwood, being able to stick with him through thick and thin. Granted, that being said, Hector, while Eliwood's the more noble and kind of intelligent lord, Hector's basically just a kind of brash, easygoing guy who more or less acts before thinking. Like, smash first, ask questions never. And honestly, it definitely shows, as Hector is one of the best honestly one of the best units in Fire Emblem Blazing Sword. I mean, he hits hard, he deals a lot of damage, and honestly, it is enjoyable to say the least. But honestly, he gets even better when he promotes to becoming a Great Lord. Not only does he gain access to swords, but he also gains access to the signature axe to the legendary axe Armads, the signature weapon of one of the 8 Crusaders of Durban, one of the 8 Crusaders, who basically tells him that when he picks up Armads, he will not die peacefully, and he will die in battle. Granted, that does say a lot, but in Binding Blade, that definitely comes to fruition, as we basically see him dying at the hands of Zephiel. Oh my god. And let me tell you, Zephiel is intimidating. But even with that, Hector has become so iconic. Not only gaining so many amazing alts in Fire Emblem Heroes, including an adorable Halloween alt alongside his daughter Lilina, but he also makes an appearance in Fire Emblem Engage as a DLC emblem bracelet, which is kind of awesome to say the least. And honestly, I don't think I have it any other way. Just have to say it. Moving on next at number 2, we have Presea from Tales of Symphonia. Yeah, honestly, considering everything, many of the axe wielders we've had are just big, burly dudes. Just who love to hit things. And Francisca is the only female thus far on this list. So it's kind of surprising that they were all beaten out by a 12-year-old girl. That's why I'd be saying, if Persea is not exactly 12 years old. Yeah, Persea may look like she's 12 years old, but she's actually 28. And basically, the first time Lloyd and the others end up meeting Presea is in the village of Meotoko, where she's seen dragging an entire tree that she felled by her own through the town. Granted, basically the townspeople treat her like an abomination, but she basically takes it in stride. Of course, that being said, it turns out her exceptional strength came as a fact of her becoming an experiment with utilizing X spears. The very same thing that can give the people in Tales of Symphonia the magical abilities to utilize their texts and to utilize different texts and spells. And yeah, while it kind of gave her superhuman strength, it also kind of stunted her growth to the size of a preteen and to the size of a young tween. And of course, when her father died, she more or less ended up stunting her emotions as well. Of course, leaving her sister Alicia as the emotional center of her family. That is, until she was killed by her master, Bryant, who just so happens to turn out to be another party member, Regal Bryant. Granted, while she does basically learn the truth, she's eventually able to forgive him, and well, she eventually learns how to utilize her emotion, get back in touch with her emotions. It really says a lot. Plus, she has a lot of amazing axe attacks that deal a lot of damage. And it really does a lot. I mean, heck, there's even a nice little reference in Tales of Vesperia as there is an attack or a style called Combateer that can be learned by Carol, which raises his skill when fighting with an axe. Yeah. So essentially, Presea basically inspired Carol, although she's much more usable than that kid. Seriously, Carol always gets the short end of the stick. What can you do? That just leaves us with number 1. And honestly, yeah. It has to be a League of Legends character. And what better way than Darius the Hand of Nox. What other character to take the number one spot than Darius, the Hand of Noxus? Honestly, when it comes down to it, League is known for its many different factions. Demacia, Piltover, Zon, and Noxus. And many characters seem to show the perfect amount involving their area. Darius is just solid Noxian all the way around. Not only being the general of the main forces, of the main Noxian forces, but also a right-hand man to Jericho Swain, another Noxian character. And he's basically your standard red-blooded Noxian, and willing to fight for the group. Of course, he's even able to butt heads with He's also known for butting heads with his Demacian rival, Garen, constantly. Largely because he believes that he has never seen battle in his life, while he's known battle being from Noxus. And it's definitely seen with his style. With his passive bloodletting, basically causing bleed in his opponents whenever he attacks. He has an attack that can basically not only increase his speed, but he has an attack another attack called Arrest, basically just not only has him hookshot an enemy champion to him by throwing his axe in a cone in front of him, and even slowing his opponents, and he even attacks with an axe swing to more or less knock back opponents and deal true damage. Of course, the main thing that's notable is his ultimate Noxian Guillotine, which, honestly, that's what Chaos Dunk is all about. This is where I would say not Darius is number one. I would say that if a few months later we hadn't been introduced to his brother, Draven the Glorious Executioner. Yeah. And Draven is very much similar to his brother, although a little bit more hot-headed, and even though he was a former soldier, he eventually became an executioner just because he loved the thrill of the battle and the adoration people give him whenever he busts out his executions. I mean, heck, he's even able to let anyone go if they're able to survive a couple of rounds with him in the ring. And what do you expect when the guy's passive is called League of Draven? Yeah, that says a lot. I mean, heck, gives him stacks of adoration, which can be traded up for gold. Not only that, his spinning axe allows him to throw his axes towards the opponent, not only knocking them back, but also every time he catches them, he gains more and more adoration. Stand Aside basically he knocks back and slows his opponents just by him just knocking his axes, hitting his opponent with his axes. Blood Rush, basically he allows him to get faster every time it's used, basically as a sort of like adrenaline rush. And then you have Whirling Death, his ultimate. And oh my god, if he deals enough damage and compared to the stacks of adoration that he has, he can instantly execute an enemy champion. Yeah, that is crazy. So, which one am I choosing for number 1? Darius or Draven? My answer? Both. Both is good. That's right. That's why the number 1 axe wielder in video games is Darius and Draven from League of Legends. And I wouldn't have it any other way. And it says a lot once you realize Draven's voice actor Eric Braw also voiced Sombron from Fire Emblem Engage. So even I'm tickled pink at this revelation. That being said, those are my top 10 axe wielders in video games. Like, comment, and subscribe. And of course, if you want to support me so I can make more videos for you, join my Patreon at patreon.com/theautisticscyther. Every little bit of support helps. In order for me to bring you more videos or even better videos than I'm making now. And honestly, free tier or paid tier, it doesn't matter. And if I get your support will help motivate me to make better and much more amazing videos than I am now. So, it's kind of worth it. That being said, and I'll see you. And next week, we're gonna head back to Fire Emblem and take a look at my favorite skills and see if they're enough to pay the bills. See you next time.